My name is Laura Giappichelli, and I'm a project advisor at the LIFE unit here in Brussels, and I will be moderating this webinar today. This webinar, it will be recorded, so in case you want to watch it again or you miss some parts, do not worry, it will be online on our website just after this webinar. I see that we have many participants, about 700 from all around Europe joining us. I'm very happy. I hope you will find this webinar useful and interesting for you. It is about the LIFE program, and it is about climate adaptation and our call for proposal 2020. For those who are completely new to LIFE, I just want to mention that this is the program of the European Union dedicated to fund projects in the field of climate and change and environment. And you will get to know more, of course, through the course of this webinar. But now let me welcome also our panelists. So I would like to ask our panelists to turn on their mic and turn on their cameras. Yes, I see all of them. So we have with us, hi everyone. We have with us Peter. Hi Peter. Peter is working at the European Commission as the Director General of Climate Action. Hi Peter. We have with us Bernd Decker. Bernd is working as a Senior Project Advisor at the LIFE team in the climate team. Hi Bernd. And we have Mara Mendez. She is coordinating the external monitoring team on the climate trend. Hi Mara. And we have Tanel Matlik. Hi Tanel. Tanel is working on the project LIFE Urban Storm. And we have Verle Campens. Verle, she's working on the project LIFE Spark. Hi Verle. So you have seen now all our panelists. We can move directly into the core of the webinar. So I would like just to ask you panelists to turn off your camera and mic for the moment. Thank you. Thank you very much. Here is the agenda of today. As you can see, we cover a lot of topics, and we hope this will be very useful for you to prepare your proposal, to clarify some doubts. I will start by giving you some information about the novelties that we have introduced, also related to the situation of the COVID-19. I will then pass the floor to my colleague Peter, who will give you an overview of the European policy on climate adaptation, and more specifically, he will go into the priorities on climate adaptation for the call for proposal 2020 of the LIFE program. And afterwards, we will see with Bernd specifically how the evaluation process will work and how can you develop a good project proposal. We will have afterwards a question and answer session moderated by Mara. There you have the opportunity, of course, to send us your questions, and we will try to reply to as many questions as we can. I will tell you in a minute how to do with sending questions to us. The second part of the webinar will be focused on the experience of projects who made through the competition and who are now currently running. So we have Tanel with LIFE Urban Storm and Verle, who will tell us about LIFE Spark. They will also provide us with some hints on how they got successfully through all this competition. We will end the webinar with another session of question and answers, again moderated by Mara. And this will be a second opportunity for you to ask for any clarifications in case something needs to be clarified. So how to send us questions? You have a panel on the right side of your screen where you can type the questions. It's a question pane on the right side. At any time during the presentations, and we will receive the questions and we will try to answer as many questions as we can due to considering the time that we have. So I think we can start with the first topic. So let's move to the next slide. And let's go to the novelties. Novelties and measures that we have taken due to the situation of the COVID-19, this difficult situation for economic, health, social issues. We have tried to respond to this situation quite quickly, quite rapidly. And the first main novelty is that all the deadlines of all the call for proposals of the LIFE program has been extended. For the call for proposal on climate adaptation, the deadline is 6th of October 2020, and Bernd will tell you a bit more on the process of submitting the project to this call for proposal. Another great news is that you have the possibility to have bilateral chats with one of us, one of the project advisors in the LIFE team, just to discuss about your proposal, to understand whether it fits or not the call priorities, to get some clarifications. These small chats are available until the 15th of May. It was launched on the 30th of April with the LIFE Info Day at European level, and you will get more information at the very end of the webinar. We have also increased the pre-financing payment, which is now up to 40% to the budget of the European Union to your project, which means that you will have more cash flows. Before it was 30%. We have also introduced a new narrative on startups. We encourage startups to come in to join the LIFE family. Startups can team up, for instance, with other companies, bring in innovation and their solutions. And yeah, we look forward to see more startups with us. The priorities and the topics of the LIFE call for proposal remain, but we also welcome projects that are linked or address the situation of the pandemics that is currently now, or we hope not, but also in the future. Last but not least, another feature is the grants to third parties. I have another slide for that, which is the next one, and that goes specifically to the financial support to third parties for traditional projects. What does it mean? It means that if you have a project and you would like to have some local initiatives with other entities that are not part of the consortium, now it is possible to provide these entities a sub-grant, so a small grant up to 20,000 euro for a maximum of 100,000 euro for the whole project. This will help you to engage other entities that cannot join the consortium for different issues, bureaucracy or others, and also to add value to your projects through this sub-granting scheme. You see in the slide what we expect from you to explain in the proposal. You should say if you would like to use this scheme, if you would like to how to use it, so how you will manage the process, which type of results you expect, which type of activities you would like to run through the sub-granting. These are some of the main features, some of the main measures that we have introduced, but I invite you to check on the LIFE website because we have a detailed page about COVID-19 and novelties measures. So from my side, it's all. I am glad now to pass the floor to my colleague Peter Loeffler. Peter, as I mentioned at the beginning, will tell us about the EU climate policy and adaptation, and specifically on the priorities on the climate call for proposal. So I leave the floor to Peter.
Good afternoon to everyone. It's a real pleasure to be in today's webinar. In the last weeks, our minds are all focused on the COVID-19 virus and how it is changing our world. Now, I work in the Commission's adaptation unit, and in a weird way, this virus has helped me understand much better what it means to have to adapt to a completely new reality. Speaking of adaptation, We all know that we have another big adaptation challenge right ahead of us, and this is adaptation to climate change. Because no matter how successfully we cut greenhouse gases in the years to come, a good deal of global warming is bound to happen in the course of this century. You see on the screen the famous temperature stripe graph, which I did for Belgium because I live in Brussels. And what we can see is an evolution from a lot of blue to a lot of red in the past decades. And if we were to extend this graph into the future, it's likely going to be dark red all over the place, unless the designers have to come up with a new color to show temperatures which we haven't experienced in Belgium so far. So adaptation is a real necessity, and improving our resilience to climate change and our preparedness is urgent. Since 2013, the EU does have an adaptation strategy to that effect, which comprises of three main pillars. First, action by member states, because adaptation is most adaptation work has to be done at national, regional, and local levels. Second, better informed decision making through research and by generating and spreading better knowledge, for instance, through the Climate Adapt platform. And third, climate proofing of EU action. And with this, I mean harnessing all relevant sectoral EU policies in support of adaptation and climate resilience. Now, the EU adaptation strategy was written in the context of 2013, really, and a lot has happened since then. The central project of the current European Commission and of the EU overall is the so-called European Green Deal. It's our roadmap for making the EU more sustainable by trying to turn climate and environmental challenges into real opportunities. Now, there are many different elements to the Green Deal, but most relevant for today's webinar are first, the EU's commitment to climate neutrality by 2050, and this means no net emissions of greenhouse gases by then. These climate neutrality commitment has been turned into a proposal for an EU climate law, which the Commission has been presenting in March this year. And this climate law would, for the first time, also sort of introduce a binding legal objective on adaptation for the European Union, because the current EU strategy is not legally binding. The Green Deal also includes, in the same logic, plans for a new and more ambitious EU adaptation strategy to climate change. There are provisions for a European Climate Pact to engage more strongly with the public on climate action. And finally, and importantly, the Green Deal is also committed to preserving and restoring ecosystems and biodiversity, because we all know on the top of the climate crisis, we also have a biodiversity crisis looming, and the two are connected and we must address them together. Now, let me get back to the new EU adaptation strategy. The announcement to the webinar said that I would provide you with an outline of the strategy, and to be very honest, we are not quite there yet. So I can't really give you that outline, but we're almost nearly there. What I can say is that the new strategy will build on the evaluation of the current strategy, and that many of the current elements will continue to be important. We need sort of more of the same. And so there will be more emphasis on the need for climate proofing, resilience building, prevention and preparedness. Climate adaptation should even more influence public and private investments in support of adaptation, including on nature-based solutions. And we consider it also very important that investors, insurers, businesses, cities, and also individual citizens really are able to get the necessary data and information to identify their climate change risks and to act on them. We are just at the verge of launching an open public consultation on the new adaptation strategy, and therefore to publish a preliminary outline of it. So once this consultation is open, you will be able to see what we have in the pipeline, and we will invite you to give us your feedback and suggestions if you wish. Finally, on timeline, we hoped to be able to publish the new strategy by the end of this year, but this may now slip into early 2021. So I hope this quick overview has helped you to see sort of the broader context to this year's live climate adaptation call. Overall, the goal of the call is to support adaptation and resilience building through new approaches, demonstration projects, pilots, transfer of know-how, innovative solutions. We give very much importance to synergies with climate mitigation and biodiversity objectives, because as I said before, they all have to work together and they can. And finally, it matters a lot that LIFE projects do their utmost to work through partnerships, engaging others, and to mobilize finance and investments. Now, in order to deliver these broad objectives and sort of the EU climate policy overall, the call specifies 5 policy areas, and under each policy area, a number of key work areas. For those of you who know LIFE climate adaptation already, there are no major changes compared to last year, and so most of the areas will be very familiar to you. If you are completely new to LIFE, and if you want your proposal to be successful, please do make sure that your project clearly addresses at least one of these areas, one of these policy and one of these work areas. So let me quickly run through the 5 policy areas and the work areas. Policy area 1 is urban adaptation and land use planning, which limits the impacts of climate change. Now, this is very much linked to the Covenant of Mayors on Climate and Energy, a major EU and now global initiative. And this is therefore also the first key area of this policy area. Other key work areas include innovative solutions on water, energy, and construction sectors, actions to tackle the health and impacts of climate change, which is an increasingly important theme, and private sector involvement through public-private partnerships and finance. And that may include insurance solutions. Let me mention in this context also once again the upcoming Climate Pact and its emphasis on public participation and on mobilizing local initiatives. The second policy area is resilience of infrastructure, and that can include the application of blue-green infrastructure and ecosystem-based approaches to adaptation. Just like last year, there's one single work area in the call this year, and this deals with assessing the vulnerability and enhancing the resilience of infrastructure. And that can mean transport, energy, security, telecommunications networks, health infrastructure, water and waste management, and so on. Projects can be anything from developing new standards or codes for infrastructure to the wider use of ecosystem-based approaches. What you see on the right of the screen is a screenshot of a guide which we use in the Commission to assess the climate change vulnerabilities of major EU-funded infrastructure projects. So if you plan to submit a proposal in this area, please do have a look at this guide to see whether the method proposed in this guide can be useful for your project. And you can equally find a lot of guidance on vulnerability assessments on the Climate Adapt platform. Now, the third policy area is on the sustainable management of water in drought-prone areas and on flood and coastal management. Work areas are quite specific, like last year, dealing with flood management, including landslides, improving drainage systems in cities and outside, coastal management, notably in densely populated deltas and coastal cities, and improving rainwater management and resilience to drought. Policy area 4 is on agriculture, forestry, and on tourism, including in island and mountain areas. The work areas for agriculture and forests are slightly different from last year, but between the two, they are very similar. So they both give particular attention to the development of adaptation strategies on the basis of vulnerability assessments, the necessary skills and practices to put them into practice, the adequacy of crop and tree species, varieties, and provenances for future climatic conditions, and last but not least, emphasis on the associated value chains, i.e. downstream and upstream industries in the agriculture and forestry sector. For tourism, there is no specific work area description, which leaves proposals, on the one hand, a very wide field to explore in your proposals, but of course, all proposals must contribute to the overall objectives of the call and to the priorities of the 2020 call and link to them. Finally, let me conclude with Policy Area 5, which focuses on the EU's outermost regions. And these are areas such as Canary Islands, La Réunion, Guadeloupe, Martinique, Madeira, Azores Islands, etc. The EU cares a lot for these outermost regions, and in a climate change context, many of them are increasingly threatened by weather extremes like hurricanes and other extreme events. And therefore, this policy area focuses a lot on risk and vulnerability assessments and adaptation strategies for these outermost regions, early warning systems, improved ecosystem resilience, including also in coastal areas, and finally, the resilience of energy infrastructure, and in particular, renewable energy infrastructure to extreme weather events. So I hope with this quick overview, I have sort of given you a good idea of the context to the call and of the call, and that I could help you understand the 2020 adaptation call and its priorities a bit better. Many thanks for your attention, and back to the moderator.
Thank you very much, Peter. Indeed, it was very useful, your presentation. You gave us some insights on the new upcoming adaptation policy, but also specifically on the call for proposal on the climate adaptation priorities. So we are now going to the next presentation. It will be Bernd Decker, who will guide us through the call for proposal 2020, specifically on the evaluation process and on how to prepare a good proposal. So please, Bernd, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Laura. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Great to be here, and great that there is so much interest in this field. After Peter's presentation on the policy priorities with regards to climate change adaptation, I will present to you how you will develop your proposal and how we, the LIFE team at EASME, are selecting project ideas and co-funding successful projects. Given a short time, I will focus on the traditional projects only, but you can also ask questions in the chat related to other LIFE project types, for example, integrated projects. Some few statistics. Although the LIFE program financed climate action projects already in the past since many years, the sub-program on climate change adaptation was created in 2014. Since then, we have selected 71 climate change adaptation projects. They're mainly in the areas of urban resilience and adaptation in non-urban areas like coastal regions, mountainous regions, island regions, also in agriculture and forestry. And these 71 projects, they have a volume of 245 million euros, of which we contribute 130 million in terms of EU co-funding. Please also note that climate change adaptation components are in other LIFE sub-program environment, for example, under the nature biodiversity projects. What kind of proposals do we support? So we would like we support three main types of traditional projects, and we expect a high degree of innovation, and therefore we welcome particularly pilot projects and demonstration projects under this trend, also under climate change adaptation. You might find this challenging because the solutions which can be proposed, for example, nature-based solutions, can be rather traditional in terms of planting vegetation, trees, and so on. But we would like you to focus on innovative approaches and demonstrations. But under climate action, we also support best practice projects. On the right side, I give you an example of the last call, how the proposals or in which areas the proposals were submitted. The vast majority of proposals were submitted under agriculture, forestry and tourism, and adaptation, urban adaptation and planning. And the remaining areas or sectors received only few proposals. So the interest was mainly in these large areas, but we would like to welcome proposals also in the other sectors. When you have decided on developing a project idea, please remember the focus of the current call for proposals. First, we want to see real implementation of climate policy. This can be your local adaptation strategy. This can be contributing to a national strategy or even to the EU climate change adaptation strategy. The implementation means that you demonstrate a concrete solution during your project. So if you have flooding events, we expect that you reduce the risk of flooding during the course of the project. Obviously, the solution will be very local, but we request you also to demonstrate EU added value, since you will receive EU money and EU grant. Therefore, we want to see efforts you do in terms of sustaining the solution you are proposing. It should be a lasting solution. We also want to see efforts in terms of replicating the solution to other places which have similar problems. For this, it is best to have transnational projects, also larger scale projects, and we also insist in quantified result indicators. Sorry for this slide. The graph was done before the coronavirus situation. Here, I would like to see the logic of our selection process. Our main interest is to select excellent projects. But we also want to make best use of the budget we have at disposal for climate change adaptation. And thirdly, we consider it as important to motivate potential applicants and keep interested applicants also motivated to submit good proposals. And I give you some figures so that you can assess the success rate, for example, of a proposal which you submit. In average, we receive around 130 to 170 proposals per year. About half of the proposals submitted under climate change mitigation, the other half under climate change adaptation, and we receive in the average around 10% on governance and information for climate change. The indicative budget for this upcoming call is 36 million for climate change mitigation. Climate change adaptation, we will have 30 million at disposal, and for governance and information, 8 million. So we will have more budget available than we had available in the previous years. This means when we look at the usually 35 to 40 selected projects, you have a relatively good chance if you submit a proposal to be selected. Out of the submitted proposals, we will then have in the range of 15 projects dedicated to climate change adaptation. Remember, the EU co-funding will be 55% on your eligible costs. On the 6th of October, you will have to submit your proposal. Afterwards, we will use independent evaluators for the evaluation, which will take place during November until January 2021. And we expect to notify the applicants by end of February 2021. The successful applicants will be invited to a revision phase, and after successful completion of the revision phase, we will sign grant agreements approximately in May, June 21. And as indicated in the guidelines, you will be able to start your project from 1st of July 2021. Remember, climate action requires a one-stage application process. This means by 6th of October, we expect a full proposal to be submitted. To prepare a proposal, you have to rely on several documents which are published on our website. The two most important documents are the guidelines for applicants, which provides you all the insights, all the guidance you need for preparing the application. But do not forget to look into the guidelines for evaluation, because this will enable you or show you according to which or against which criteria the evaluators will evaluate your proposal. It's also useful to look at the model grant agreement, because at the end of the process, if you are successful, you will have to sign a grant agreement with EASME, and this grant agreement cannot be modified by you, so you have to be able also to be able to sign such an agreement. On the website, you will find more information, and also please watch out for an addendum which will specify the further steps in terms of the first slide Laura has presented on the measures in this current or addressing the current COVID situation. Now let me go to quickly through what will you expect when you have decided to present a proposal. We have an online an online proposal submission tool, which is called eProposal. You find all the guidance in the application guidelines. And this tool will require you to fill in several forms. The first part are the A forms, where you submit certain information regarding the partnership. Here, please note that the text which you write in the description of the participants will be used for evaluation to see whether the partnership is relevant to the proposal idea you propose. Then the technical part and the financial part are the core of the proposal. The technical part is organized in the B forms. Here, apart from the technical summary, which is also important because colleagues like Peter, they're usually only reading the summary of a proposal. The B forms also contain the general idea of your proposal, the context of the project. Here you have to describe what is the baseline, what is my starting point in my specific condition. You also write about the motivation, how does it relate to the policy priorities which were presented by Peter earlier. The C forms then in turn, they contain the detailed technical description of the proposed project. Here you describe your preparatory actions, you describe your implementation actions, you describe how you monitor the progress of your project and the results of your project. You describe how you communicate the results of your project, and you describe how you will manage the project. The financial part is very important. Here you have to describe and fill in how you will fund the individual activities by budget line, by concrete activities. And finally, you have the possibility to provide attachments. Usually there will be administrative documents, but you can also submit support letters if you have. But please do not include or attach documents which would be necessary to assess the content of the proposal. Evaluators will probably not have the time to read through this kind of attachments. Now I would like to after you have submitted a proposal, to give you a brief insight of how we would address or provide scores to your proposal. We have 100 points available to assess the proposal, and we will provide them according to 6 award criteria. The first 4 criteria have a minimum pass score, so you have to reach at least 10 points or in the first 3 criteria, or 8 points in the 4th criterion. But overall, you have to reach at least 50 points in those 4 criteria to pass to have a passing proposal. We also have bonus points. So if the proposal contributes to a policy area or a work area, you will receive for each 5 additional points if the proposal addresses these areas. And lastly, the synergies are also important. They can provide you up to 15 points, so 8 points maximum if you demonstrate that you have an intervention, a multi-purpose intervention logic, if your proposal on nature-based solution, for example, also addresses biodiversity issues or addresses the Water Framework Directive, and you contribute to the Water Framework Directive, you will receive additional points for this year. I provide you some recommendations for the proposal writing. Important is the baseline. We would like you to describe the setting, the geographical setting of the solution you propose. We want to know the starting point, and we want to know the quantified starting point. This is often a weakness in the proposals, that you do not write about where do you start from. The appropriate partnership is relevant. I most often ask, how many partners should we have? My answer is, you need as many partners for your proposal related to your objectives. So there can be proposals, they have only one partner. I have projects with one partner, one local authority, and it can be successful. And I have proposals with 26 partners. So it depends really on the objectives of your proposal, and depending on your objective, you choose the partnership. Important is the intervention logic. You have to convince the evaluators that your problem is well linked to the objective you propose, and restrict your objectives. Don't write too many or try to address too many objectives. Focus on very few objectives, and what are the actions and activities which clearly link to the objectives. Don't invent activities, actions which do not relate to the objectives. The financial coherence is important between the partners, between budget lines, and look at the value for money. If you request a 4 million project and you plant 5 trees to reduce a heat island effect in a city, this is maybe not very high value for money. The impact is important, and we want to have quantified impact to demonstrate the EU added value. Sustainability, I already mentioned. We would like to see activities in the proposal that you maintain the actions after the lifetime of the project. Replication transfer equally is important. For this, we require you to write a dedicated action, and we would like to see already activities which lead to the replication or even transfer of your strategy. And do not forget to describe the synergies. They provide you important points to make a proposal successful. I come to the last slide because many may ask, okay, this is the last call for proposals under the current LIFE program, but LIFE will continue. There is a new EU multi-annual financial framework starting in 2021 until 2027, and we are currently working on the new multi-annual work program under a new LIFE regulation. There will most probably an increased LIFE budget. We include a new sub-program on clean energy transition. So a part of the current Horizon 2020 program will join the LIFE program. We will probably have revised EU co-funding rates. And in terms of priorities, we expect that the priorities, as Peter already mentioned, will be a continuation of what we have now. So if you submit a proposal now and should not be successful, I expect that this proposal can also be submitted later on in a later call after 2020. So with this, I would like to thank you, and I hope that your proposal will materialize into a project, and your project will contribute to the Great Green Deal, or the European Green Deal, which is Europe's man of the moon moment, as we know. And with this, I thank you, and I hand over to Laura.
Thank you very much, Bernd. That was very useful. I hope also the participants found already many answers to the questions. And Bernd, stay with us on live, and I invite Peter and Mara to join up. Turn on your camera and turn on your mics, because we have the first session of question and answers that will be moderated by Mara. So I leave the floor to Mara. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Good afternoon, dear attendees. We have almost 1,000 attendees today, and we have got several questions. Thank you. So, Laura, I will start with a question to you. Can you please give one or two examples of a project replication, please?
Mm-hmm. So replication is, as it was already explained, when you can develop activities in other contexts or with other entities that will allow you to continue your project or to transfer some of the good knowledge that you have developed in your project. As example, I can give you the activities of developing, involving, for instance, some authorities that are not part of your consortium, are not part of your target group, to invite them, some local authorities from other cities, to invite them to some trainings and to start working with them to develop capacities that they use during the project or after the project, and to develop the same solution that you have developed for your project. I don't know, for instance, on urban planning or water management or other type of I don't know if don't you have also other ideas on replication from our projects? Yeah, this is one example. But,
one mechanism, for example, could be a leading and follower. Well, one example could be a leading and follower principle, meaning that you're demonstrating a certain solution in one local authority, and you have in your partnership another local authority, and they would already start during the lifetime of the project replication activities. That could be one way of doing it.
Okay, thank you, Ben. I will move to the next question. It's to you as well. Please, the question is, Ben, will compensatory measures be allowed under this new third-party support? For example, giving some money to farmers to then to apply some better practices on their land?
That's not an easy question. I mean, the third-party support would be given to legal entities, so it cannot be given to private persons. If the farmers are a legal entity, a company, for example, or let's say a cooperative, farmers organized in a cooperative, they could receive this third-party grant, this cascading grant. Of course, it would require at the proposal stage a description of how it would be given to these entities and what type of activities the entities would undertake with these kind of cascading grants.
Thank you, Ben. So the next question to Peter. Peter, a project aiming at more resilient agricultural landscapes by reducing their dependence on inputs which are external to the system would fit better in the mitigation or adaptation line. It's sometimes difficult to put these kind of proposals into a single box.
Well, thanks for the question. Yeah, that looks like a difficult question, and I think the answer to the question really is in the framing and what the objective ultimately aims to achieve. I mean, if I read improved resilience is always good. The main question in the context of life is basically with mitigation, does the project aim to cut greenhouse gas emissions either on site or by reducing inputs? Is that the main objective, or is the main objective to sort of anticipate changes that come with climate change and prepare sort of agriculture for these changes? Or maybe even does it have a strong biodiversity perspective, which may suggest that it may even be better sort of in live nature? So I think by answering by trying to sort of be more specific about what the objectives are, mitigation, i.e. cutting greenhouse gases, adaptation, i.e. preparing really for future climate change, or biodiversity, I think we're getting closer to finding an answer to that question. I was just looking at the work areas for agriculture again, and I think depending on the answer to these questions, you could probably find a way of fitting a project like this into adaptation. But as I say, it really depends on the main orientation. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. The next question to Bern. Bern, regarding the LIFE project does not finance infrastructure, but there are work areas for infrastructure in climate adaptation. What actions and costs could be included in such projects if building of infrastructure is not financed?
Under LIFE, we allow the financing of infrastructure to a certain extent. Up to 500,000 is not a problem. Of course, this is very small if you propose really large infrastructure project. So under very well justified exceptions, we can go higher than the 500,000 for an individual piece of infrastructure. So you could have also several pieces of infrastructure in your proposal or in your project, each 500,000. So there can be exceptions to this, but they have to be very, very well justified. The purpose of LIFE is to demonstrate certain solutions. We are not replacing, for example, structural funds. So for larger infrastructure proposals, you would have to look for other financing or to make use of the other financing opportunities. In terms of the infrastructure, typically infrastructures could be if you build, for example, a new high efficient pump, which helps you to mitigate the risk of flooding. And for this pump, you have to build a foundation with a housing around it. So the pump itself could be, if it's something very innovative, which is not available on the market, could be a prototype, while the housing and the foundation would be an infrastructure. So there could be many more examples. Often there is the question, is a green roof an infrastructure or what is it? It depends. If your if your proposal of the green roof is something very innovative, we consider the entire installation as, if it's innovative, it can be a prototype. If we look at a nature-based solution that you remove, for example, a dam or a hard barriers, then removing that would fall under infrastructure. But the planting and the design of the new landscape, that could then potentially fall under different category. For example, again, prototype, if you test and pilot something which has never been done before.
Thank you, Bernd. I assume we still have a question, time for one more question. Laura, please, is a transnational approach necessary for LIFE program?
So transnational, it's not compulsory within LIFE program. So you can run and develop your project in one area, one country. Of course, if transnationality can add value to your project, this is encouraged. And actually, we also score additional points for transnationality. It's up to 4 points. It was mentioned by Bernd before, for transnational projects. But we do finance projects that are not at all transnational, so that's not a problem. I think we are, maybe this would be the last question for this first question and answer session. Because of the time, I'm just checking, and we have another session of question and answers, so no worries, this will be at the end and it will be a bit longer of this one. So I would like to thank the panelists and Mara for moderating this session at the moment. Thank you very much, and I invite you to turn off your mic and camera for this moment. Thank you. I saw also another couple of questions I would like to reply, and one is about the slides. Yes, the slides will be shared, so no worries. The webinar will be recorded and the slides will be shared at the end of this webinar, so you will have all the material for you. So now we are going to the next part of the webinar, which looks into the experiences of the projects who went through the competition and who are now running. And we have first an experience from Estonia, Tanel Matlik with LIFE Urban Storm. He will tell us about the projects, and maybe also some tips for the new applicants. Hi, Tanel, I'll leave you the floor.
Good afternoon, and I am very glad to present today my experience. And I have made also a small presentation about the experience that we have. And in the following, I will then show you what has been the main outcomes or main conclusions that we have right now. I hope that you see the slideshow on the screen. And first of all, what about what kind of project we have? This is basically about climate change adaptation, focusing on the storm water issues. As in Estonia, we in the near future will face the quite heavy rainfall, and that's why it's necessary to prepare the Estonian municipalities how to face this challenge. It concerns both the skills and knowledge of municipal specialists and engineers, but also the kind of technical preparedness, technical solutions for this. And for this reason, what we have done, we prepared the project in 2017, designated for the local municipality as beneficiaries. And we have different activities there, like policy framework building, know-how, also the technical innovation activities. We have knowledge transfer and information dissemination, and also, of course, management and monitoring. And it's a 5 years project, so we basically have a lot of deliverables, like we prepared a strategy and action plan for climate change adaptation. We developed a stormwater e-monitoring solution. We construct the sustainable urban drainage solutions. We trained municipal water management specialists, and also we informed the local inhabitants about the nature-based stormwater treatment issues. And we have actually there not too many partners. Our municipality, Viimsi Rural Municipality, is the lead partner, and also we have the Tallinn City Department as participating, also the Baltic Environmental Forum and the Estonian University of Life Sciences. So it's in that sense only Estonian partners participating, and the budget is around 2 million euros, including life program contribution around 1 million. So that's about the project itself, and we have now worked for a year and a half, so a lot to go still. If I now remind how we prepared the project and what we expected from the LIFE program, then we decided to make the project in a kind of integrated approach, that we should include the kind of so-called soft activities like training of specialists and awareness raising of inhabitants, but also the kind of construction and e-monitoring solutions. Also, what we have seen that the LIFE program has offered for us the kind of excellent networking opportunities to learn from best practices from other LIFE projects. Also, the expectation for the LIFE was also that the good reputation of LIFE program helps to disseminate information in the Estonian media, that the kind of brand of LIFE helps to do it. And naturally, of course, the funding, that financial contribution from LIFE program makes it possible to do actually a lot of activities that we have, like construction of sustainable urban drainage solutions or train the specialists. And also what we kept in mind, and also what we decided to include in the application form, there was already a question that we planned the specific action on replication and transfer And in our case, it means that we have two groups to be formed this year. That one group will be municipalities who are interested in development of climate change adaptation strategies and action plans, and the second replication group for these who are interested in establishing these sustainable urban drainage solutions. And we hope that we can provide through individual and group consultation a practical toolbox and also joint work to develop these things so that it's not only our project partners, but also a wider range of municipalities which will do it in parallel outside our project itself. So that's why we think that this replication plays quite important role. And now if I say a few words about the lessons from preparation of application, then in our case, we decided to merge two smaller project ideas to a larger project. And we could say that it has proven to be effective because now we have more impact on the climate change adaptation in Estonia. The second moment was that the work itself was very intense. We had approximately 4 months before the application deadline, and it was really intense work, so that if you start to prepare the application, do it already now and prepare yourself for a quite intense schedule. And also important was to ensure sufficient expertise, that you really have the best specialists who are ready to prepare the application, because that the volume of application form is rather comprehensive, and you need a lot of good specialists working on this. And also, what are the other tips or thoughts that we very much used online collaboration tools. I think even exactly at current moment when there are travel restrictions, it is also important. We used a lot of joint writing of application form. We made kind of texts in Google document format. We used also the budget in Excel before we entered the data into the electronic environment application form. Also, we used a lot of Skype or other this kind of online conference tools. No need to have these face-to-face meetings actually. And maybe one suggestion more, that if it's possible for you in the project to include the cross-border cooperation activities, because a lot of actions are actually going on in different member states, and it's better to involve as partners the organizations from other countries, or to plan just the kind of study visits or international events in the project for this. So this is basically the key ideas or thoughts that I had. If you want to know more about our project, then it's available on our website, but also I'm ready to answer your questions if you have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tanel. That was really interesting to get to know your project, but also the recommendations, very practical, that you give to other applicants. As I mentioned before, the slides will be available and the webinar is recorded, so you can come back to the slide of Tanel and maybe also contact you for more practical tips. So I invite Tanel, if you could turn off your mic and camera, because now is the turn of another live project that went through the competition successfully. We moved from Estonia to Belgium, and we moved to Live Spark with Verle Campens, the project manager. Verle, if you could join up with your screen. And thank you very much. Thank you, Verle. I'll leave you the floor.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Laura. Good afternoon. I will present you my live project Spark. It's about it's a climate change adaptation project, and it's about space for adapting the river Scheldt to climate change. It started in 2017, and it will run for 5 years. What is the aim with climate change? So the sea level will rise, and there will be more heavy storms and so more floodings. The Scheldt estuary is specifically vulnerable for sea level rise because it has an open connection with the sea, and the adjacent land is very low lying, and it's very densely populated and industrialized. What will we do? We will build 8 climate buffers, and 3 of them are a special type of climate buffer. They are called flood control areas with controlled reduced tide. Because it's such a densely populated area, there's not a lot of space. So these areas, they can store the maximum amount of water at the peak of the storm tide. And also they allow estuarine nature to develop, and they allow the ecosystem of the river to restore. So we will build 8 climate buffers, and 428 hectares of estuarine nature will be able to develop. The total budget of the project is 8.5 million, and we have a contribution of the EU of 2.4 million. It's not the 55% because we have some durable goods, like as you see on the right on the photo, we have some intake and discharge sluices, and infrastructure is subject to depreciation rules, and only the depreciation during the project is eligible. So it's a project of 5 years, and it's a best practice project. We have 5 partners. The coordinating beneficiary is the Agentschap voor Natuur en Bos, the Agency for Nature and Forest, because we already have some experience with live projects from the past. Then we have the engineering partner. We have 2 scientific partners, and we have a local embedded partner, which we find very interesting because they have a local network, and they are very helpful to build local support. LifeSpark is all about creating space for the river, nature development, but also about knowledge sharing with other estuaries within the EU. We will organize some workshops and let our model, our computer model, run on other estuaries to see how our flood control areas can help those estuaries. And the 4th pillar of the project is local support. So we will have some education activities, recreation, training of ambassadors, a festival for the river, and co-creation. LifeSpark is part of the larger program, the Sigma Plan, which is a plan that protects Flanders from floods. Yeah, here you have a map of Flanders, so that's the northern part of Belgium. You see Brussels in the middle, and this area is the area of the Sigma Plan, and here, if you can see it, it's the area of LifeSpark. I will show it in the next slide. So the green dots are the 8 climate buffers that will be created along the river Scheldt and the river Durme. Yeah, there's the open connection to the sea. We didn't choose for like a big construction like a storm surge barrier, which is the case, for example, in London or in the Netherlands. But we have chosen for to work with nature and for a more modular system, which is more flexible and which is feasible at a much lower cost. And working with nature gives you multiple benefits. So it's not only most of the time cheaper to get flood control, but also there's nature development. Shipping is still possible, recreation is possible, and other ecosystem services, they come for free, like carbon storage, drought control, water sanitation, etc. So yes, nature can be fierce, but also very generous. It gives us floodings, but when you give something, she gives you a lot back. And that's why nature is female. These are 2 slides with the actions of my project, so you can have an idea of the actions. The A actions are the preparatory actions, like acquiring all kinds of permits, elaboration of plans and studies. The B actions are purchase or lease of lands. In our project, we don't have a B action. The C actions, they are the core of your project, the core actions of your project. Here we have the 8 climate buffers, and then we have 2 C actions which are all about reciprocal learning and transferability and replicability. That are the 2 actions where we will have workshops with other EU estuaries. The D actions are the monitoring actions. Those are obligatory also. We have a scientific monitoring and the monitoring of the socio-economic impact of the project. The E actions are the communication actions. Some of them are obligatory, like building a website or a web page of the project, having information panels of your project, a brochure, a folder of your project, networking with other projects, and also at the end of the project you will need to write a layman's report and to establish an afterlife plan for the sustainability of your project. The F projects are the F actions, sorry, are the project management actions. Voila. Okay, then the slides about why did you choose for a live project? Yeah, because of the resources, of course, the extra resources for staff and for investments. But also because a live project gives your actions a sense of urgency and gives your project priority when, for example, the budget of your organization has to be divided. Your project gets more priority because you have to reach some deadlines and you have your grant agreement with EASME. Yes. Because of the name of live, it also gives your project importance and more visibility, and that can lead to social support and co-ownership. Also, the European network with other live projects is very interesting, very important. And then I come to the EU added value of my projects. Well, we have the transferability of our best practice of a flood control area with controlled reduced tide, but also our project contributes to the following directives and of course to the climate change adaptation policy. And then the last slide, some tips for future projects. I would really recommend keep it simple. Do not add too many actions or too many partners, just the necessary ones, and consider maybe this partner doesn't really have to be a partner, but can be a financer or can be an external assistant. Because the more partners and the more actions you have, it will complicate the administration of your project when your project is running. Another, like a partner from another member state is could be very useful, and also a local partner can be very useful for your local support and your local network. I think you need at least 6 months to prepare your proposal. In Estonia, they can do it in 4 months, but yeah, I would recommend taking enough time. It's really an intense process. And it's very important to study the financial guidelines, which are available on the website of EASME, or consider to hire an expert on live project proposals. Because that's very important to know those financial guidelines. And during execution, be aware, that within the goals of your project, some changes are still possible during execution. You have to discuss it with your monitoring team, but they are very helpful, and yes, you can ask them. They are always helpful, always there to help you. Okay, thank you for listening. I wish you a lot of success with your proposal. And for more information on our project, you can check the website of LifeSpark and of the Sigma Plan. Thank you very much. Back to Laura.
Thank you very much. It was really useful to see the presentation about your project, but also the tips for the new applicants. And yeah, now we have the next session of question and answers. So I invite all the panelists of today, Peter, Bernd, to join the screen, Tanel, Mara. Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone. And I leave the floor to Mara for the last session of question and answers. Just reminding that we will share everything on the website, the video and the slides, so everything will be available afterwards. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Laura. First of all, thanks to all attendees for the several questions. We got very interesting questions here, and we might not be able to go through all of them, but let's try to address the maximum we can. And please remember that several questions are also available in the question and answer session of the live website, frequently asked questions. So the first question to Tanel from Project Urban Storm. Please, could you tell about the application process? And today, knowing the being managing the project, what would you do different in your application?
As I mentioned, we are actually right now are missing the kind of international cooperation aspect or cross-border cooperation aspect that we thought that it's rather easy to develop these e-monitoring solutions and also the training program for municipal engineers and specialists. But currently, we see that the knowledge within Estonia is limited, and we need the kind of expertise from other countries. And we actually plan to get some advice from Finland, also United Kingdom and elsewhere. So that's why I would say that if I would do differently, I would more include the kind of cross-border cooperation activities in the application form.
Thank you, Tanel. The next question to Verle from Spark Project. First, thanks for your presentation. And could you share how do you assure the replication and sustainability of your project? Have you already thought of this at the application process?
Well, to be honest, when we applied for the project, we had some replicability within our application, but then we got some questions from EASME to adjust it and to pay more attention to replicability. And then we added another action, action C10, about where we specifically will have some quick scans with the other European estuaries during some workshops. And we will run some data from their estuaries within our models to be able to tell them, okay, our unique type of climate buffer can be useful for your estuary or not. So at the start of our application, it was not so elaborated as it is as it was afterwards, after the questions of EASME.
Thank you. So the next question to Bern. Bern, please, can a project buy land with the grant for regenerative agriculture project, please?
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
Is it possible to use the life funding to buy land for regenerative agriculture project?
Thanks. It is in principle possible to acquire land, to purchase land, but it has to follow the rules which are set out under the guidelines for nature and biodiversity. So it's very strictly treated. It has to be land in a Natura 2000 area. So for this, I have to advise you to read carefully the guidelines for nature and biodiversity, because we did not fully describe this in the application guidelines for climate action. Reason is that out of the 250 projects which we are currently running under or managing under climate action, we have maybe 2 projects they have done land purchase.
Thank you, Ben. Now the next question to Peter. Peter, please, a project putting together tourism, agriculture, and forestry stakeholders in 3 different mountain territories in order to develop both methodology to raise awareness and to implement project pilot actions. Would it be accepted under climate adaptation or under climate governance?
It's difficult to say that based on what the question states. The key question has to be raise awareness of what and implement pilot actions on what. If this cooperation is really specifically on climate change adaptation, and once again the question is basically what will be different due to climate change, what are the increased risks, and how would this cooperation between different regions address those risks? Then it may make sense to submit it under adaptation, and otherwise, if it's more broadly about information and communication, I would tend to the latter. I wonder also whether BIND and or LAURA do have views on that.
Sorry, can you repeat, Peter? Did
right,
you?
Okay. I was just wondering whether you would think that a project on agriculture and forestry in 3 different mountain territories in order to develop pilot projects and raise awareness of subject which is still to be defined would be more on adaptation or on information and communication. I said adaptation if there is a very strong adaptation focus, and I think it would make sense, but that depends. Otherwise, I would think it's probably better to reflect on information communication if it is just very broad in that area.
Yeah, definitely. I think the point is the scope of the project and the bulk of the activities, whether they are concretely on adaptation, vulnerability assessments, or concrete adaptation, then you would fit more under the adaptation strand. Whether you look more into changing behaviors, communication campaigns that are under climate governance and information, then you would fit into this goal.
Thank you. Okay, and Laura, please continue. We also got some questions to give differences between integrated project, technical assistance, and the traditional project. If you could give some guidance to the public on this.
Sure. So these are three typologies of type of projects that we found under LIFE. We found traditional projects, which is the focus of the webinar today. So the usual project like LIFE, Spark, and Urban Storm, where you have an idea, consortium of partners, and you implement in one or more countries according to the scope of your project. Integrated projects are projects that instead address the implementation of the full, to the extent which is possible, plan or strategy related to climate adaptation in your country. So it's a large-scale project which should cover either the country or a region or a multi group of cities, and should aim, so the project, it's instrumental to implement a policy or a plan on climate adaptation in this case, but we also do fund projects on climate mitigation. So that's the difference. Mainly it's the scale and the purpose. The purpose should be for integrated projects, the implementation of a policy or of a plan related to climate adaptation or climate mitigation. This is for traditional and integrated. Technical assistance is an assistance, so it's a small grant that we provide to support you as applicants to prepare, to write an integrated project. Because we understand that the integrated project is complex because of, not just because of the size, but because of all the issues that may entail the complexity of the stakeholders that you will try to involve in the project. So we grant a small grant, we give a small grant to the preparation, the write-up, the development of the integrated project. Yeah, integrated projects and technical assistance, you see on our website the deadlines for proposals. And there you have for integrated projects 2 steps. So you can write to us. First step, it's a 10 pages concept note. So please just double check that, that you can fit within the deadlines. But for integrated projects, we are also allowed to have bilateral meetings with project advisors. You can contact us.
Thank you, Laura. Now I'd like to make a question to Tanel. Tanel, please. Could you, as a project beneficiary, as a project developer, how do you recommend to involve the subjects performing replication of a project? Do you think that is a good practice to already involve them, those who will replicate a project to be already a beneficiary of your project, in your view?
Basically, yes, it all depends on the size of the project. That in our project, there are 2 municipalities. Our replication group is more than 10 municipalities. It's natural that you cannot involve all municipalities of the replication group in your project as partners, but some of them could be involved. So yes and no. To some extent, yes, but not. I would advise not to increase the partnership too much. Otherwise, it's very hard to manage it afterwards.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Tanu. Laura and Bernd, do you have anything to add on that with regards to involving replicability as beneficiaries?
Yeah, I mean, what we will try to see in your proposal is whether you have thought through a replication strategy, so whether you have already activities identified. As I mentioned before, it could be involving by trainings or the activities that Verle and Tanel have explained in their presentations. So it's not really the point of having the beneficiaries of the replication in the consortium. That, of course, it's a sign, it's a proof that they will be involved, but it's more the content of the activities that you will lead with them. So when you have these forms on the e-proposal, just really develop at least one activity on replication. As it was mentioned by Verle, in some cases during the revision phase, we can interact with you and ask you to adjust some point or strengthen some points. So the main point is actually to develop the activity on replication, to make sure that you have a strategy on how you will involve other stakeholders. And the idea is that these stakeholders will pick up on the best practices, on the lessons learned of the others, and will then start replicating, start developing and spreading the solutions or the ideas that you have developed throughout the project.
Thank you. And Laura, please continue with me. We are getting several questions regarding the one-to-one meeting.
Yeah.
Could you tell more how to set up that and by when?
Yeah. So you have as a deadline 15th of May. So that was the one question, I think, about when is the last day. So it's this Friday. We have started having bilateral meetings since the 30th of April, so since the day of the live info day at European level. How to do it? You have to go on the live info day 2020 website, register, and then you can find one of us, which it's called the EASME expert. You will see the field of expertise, climate adaptation, mitigation, or other, and then you can write us a message or directly request for a meeting with us. I will have slides at the very end with the link directly to the live info day and for registering to have this bilateral chat. These are very small chats. It's 15, 20, maximum 30 minutes. Of course, we have to guarantee transparency, equal treatment. So we'll not go into the detail of your projects, but we can advise you on whether this project could fit or not into this call for proposal and give you some clarifications if anything is unclear.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you. And now to Bernd. Bernd, coming back to you. For urban adaptation and implementation of an action plan, is it possible to an applicant, a municipality, to justify the eligibility of land purchase in order to increase the green space and then to meet the eligibility criteria?
Well, again, it refers to the earlier question. It has to qualify the criteria which are set out in the guidelines for nature and biodiversity. So it has to meet certain criteria. It has to be related to a Nature 2000 area. Otherwise, it would not be eligible.
Thank you, Bernd. Okay, let's go to next question. Peter, is climate change adaptation in technical engineering considered a priority? For example, dealing with the stability of slopes and embankments that will be affected by climate change next years, no? With the increased rainfalls and so on. Would that be a priority area?
The answer is yes, absolutely. I mean, when I went through the policy areas and the work areas, I was referring to blue and green infrastructure and to infrastructure overall. So there's clearly a hardcore technical component if you think of slope stabilization, but there are also many biological ways of stabilizing slopes, such as afforestation and other techniques. So I guess the watchword here is really green infrastructure, ecosystem-based approaches, or also really hardcore technical approaches. Bernd has a comment on that. I hand over to him.
Yeah, thanks. Just to remember, the LIFE program offers you a certain niche, so it excludes research, because there was also one question. Research can only be a minor component of a larger pilot demonstration project, but we are also not funding large infrastructure. So when we talk about stabilization of slopes, we expect either an innovative way of doing it. That can be a technological innovative way. It can also be innovative in terms of how you convince the stakeholders to agree on this kind of intervention, because as we all know, town planning requires a lot of participatory processes and council decisions and so on. So this can also be an innovative part. So we cannot have let's say an extensive large change of infrastructure only paid out of the LIFE program, but you can of course submit a proposal where you demonstrate a certain technology plus the convincing of the relevant stakeholders, and you have maybe infrastructure funding in your back, which would then jump in when you have delivered the proof of concept.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think Peter has something to add.
Maybe just to complement, thanks Bernd also for coming in on that and clarifying that. I think a general comment is, and the question was addressed to me, is again the point about adaptation. And I think what we have seen quite often in the past is that we get project proposals which are have a sort of more general intervention logic and wanted to do something good for nature or for rivers, and which then are wrapped into some sort of adaptation logic in the sense we are addressing now climate change. But that actually is really the key question of those projects. And I think it's very important to elaborate on that in any project. So the question is really, is the project addressing a risk or a problem which is caused by climate change or which is made worse by climate change? And the project really, the proposal really needs to sort of develop the baseline and the projections to sort of give an idea of the dimension and the size of that impact and what it does to respond to that impact. So really, it's not problems in general, it's climate change caused problems. I think that's a very important point, which I just wanted to stress.
Thank you, Bernd. And well, I'd like to thank all the attendees for the several questions, very interesting. Sorry to say we are not able to cover all of them. I will return the call to Laura because we are already above the time.
Yeah, thank you, Mara, and thank you to all the panelists for this session on question and answers. As it was mentioned, unfortunately, we cannot cover all the questions now, but you still have the possibility to look at frequently asked questions in our section of the LIFE website. So have a look. There is also a document that you can download on the right side, overview. There you have even more question and answers to your perhaps question. Second point, you can, as I mentioned before, meet one of us, one of the EASME project advisor, up to Friday, so up to the 15th of May. The website is there, so just register if you haven't done yet and try to book a slot with one of us. You can always, until the day before of the project, but even afterwards, contact your national contact point. It's in every country in Europe. There is a group of person or one person dedicated to LIFE program. Normally it's at the Ministry of Environment or Climate Change. There you have the website where you can see the list of all the national contact points. Other information. So you have, and it was already mentioned by Peter, you have a catalog of live projects on climate adaptation. This is the brochure that we have published last year. Voilà. Ready, Steady, Green. It's available on our website, and you can just click and download the brochure. You have many information about the projects, the solutions they brought in, and all the contact details. So please feel free, just download the brochure. It's rather new. We just published in September last year. You have also another opportunity to look into ideas or projects have already been funded. I saw there was one question about, so we have the LIFE database. On our website, you can find LIFE database, and there you have all the projects of LIFE that have been funded so far, which are more than 5,000. But you have lots of filters, keywords, so you can easily find a project that is related to your area of work, adaptation, mitigation, but also your country, in case you want to know what's happening around you, funded by LIFE. So this is all, but actually, last point, important, please look at the application package. There you have all the information, the guidelines for applicants, evaluation guidelines, everything is there. And I would like to thank you for joining us. Really, thank you very much. I would like to thank you very much our organizers that are behind the scenes who really helped us a lot to make it happening. So thank you to Claire Taylor, thank you to Gabriela, thank you to Anna Navataso, thank you to Marisa, and thank you to all the group who made this happening. And thank you very much to all the panelists who we try to make our best. Thank you, Verle. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Bern. Thank you, Tane. Thank you, Marisa, for the moderation. So I wish you really a success. I wish that to see you in Brussels with your new live projects. I also convey you the wish from our head of unit, Angelo Salsi, who could not participate today due to other commitments, but he wrote us in the meantime to tell you good luck with everything. Hope to see you soon here in Brussels. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.